If I could do it all over again, I would choose a different path. I would learn to love my children, but also to love myself. I would find a way to live independently, embracing my later years in the way I desire. Perhaps I would join a painting class at the community center, learn to play the piano, or simply sit by the window with a cup of tea and a favorite book. I have come to realize that at this age, we do not just need love from our children, we also need the freedom and dignity to live fully. Imagine yourself sitting alone in the familiar home that once echoed with the laughter of family. The soft glow of afternoon sunlight streams through the window, but instead of feeling its warmth, you sense only a cold emptiness in your heart. That was how I felt Eleanor Thompson, a 70-year-old woman when faced with the biggest decision of my life. Should I give up my independent life to live near my children, hoping to rediscover joy and meaning? I once believed that living close to my children was the key to banishing the loneliness of old age. I dreamed of days spent surrounded by my grandchildren, helping my daughter during her busy moments and feeling like an essential part of the family. But that journey taught me a painful lesson. Sometimes what we think will bring happiness can lead us to lose ourselves. Today I want to share my story, not just to recount what I have been through, but to offer you, those of you who are older and facing similar crossroads, an honest perspective on freedom, dignity, and the meaning of life when your hair has turned gray. This is a story of hopes, losses, and the greatest lesson I have learned. Living near your children is not always the path to happiness. I am Eleanor Thompson, born and raised in a small town in Oregon, USA. I currently live in a charming little house in the suburbs of Portland with a garden full of roses and an old armchair by the window where I often sit to read or watch the sunset. At 70, I am proud of the life I have lived. 35 years as an elementary school teacher, raising 2 wonderful children and enjoying 45 years of a happy marriage with my late husband, Robert. Robert and I built a home together in Portland where we raised our son James and our daughter Sarah. Those years were filled with joy. Sunday dinners with Robert's signature grilled meats, evenings spent playing family board games, and times when we all worked together in the garden. But when I was 65, Robert passed away from a stroke, leaving me in a house that suddenly felt too vast and silent. That loss cut deeply into my heart. Every morning I woke up and looked at Robert's empty chair at the dining table where he used to sip his coffee and read the newspaper. The sound of birds chirping in the garden once, when a favorite melody, now only reminded me of the mornings when he stood there, watering the plants and whistling cheerfully. I tried to fill the void by joining a knitting club at the community center, tending to the garden, and occasionally meeting old friends. But as night fell, loneliness crept in like an uninvited guest. Sarah, my youngest child, is now 42 and a busy lawyer in Seattle, about a 2-hour drive from Portland. She is married to Michael, a software engineer, and they have 2 lovely children, Sophie 10 and Ethan 7. My son James lives in Boston, too far for regular visits. Sarah has always been the closest to me, and I am proud to see her build a successful life, though I know she is often overwhelmed by the demands of work and motherhood. When I turned 68, I began to feel the fragility of time more acutely. Joint pains started to emerge, and climbing the stairs in my 2-story house became more challenging. I wondered, can I continue living alone forever? What will happen if I fall ill or can no longer care for myself? These questions weighed on me, and an idea gradually took shape. Perhaps living near Sarah would be the answer. I imagined days spent with Sophie and Ethan, helping Sarah with the grandchildren, and feeling valued in my daughter's hectic life. That thought grew stronger, like a small warm flame in my heart. I dreamed of a life where I no longer faced the silence of an empty house. I pictured myself preparing breakfast for the grandchildren, taking them to school, and sharing stories of my youth with Sarah during peaceful evenings. I knew that many older people choose to live independently, but I had also heard of those who found joy in being close to their children. I told myself, maybe this is what I need to feel that life is still worth living. After months of deliberation, I decided to sell the house in Portland and move to live with Sarah in Seattle. I called my daughter, and she was thrilled. "Mom, that is wonderful. The kids will be so happy to have Grandma here." Her words made me feel as if I had found a light at the end of the tunnel. I packed my belongings, said goodbye to my beloved rose garden, and carried with me hope for a new chapter in my life. When I arrived in Seattle, Sarah and her family welcomed me with open arms. Sophie and Ethan jumped with excitement, hugging their grandmother tightly, and I felt my heart warm again. Sarah's house was in a quiet neighborhood with lush green trees and a spacious backyard. I was given a cozy little room with a window overlooking the garden. In those first days, I truly believed I had made the right decision. Every morning, I woke up early to prepare breakfast for the family, toast with peanut butter for Sophie, cereal for Ethan, and a cup of coffee for Sarah. I took the grandchildren to school, cleaned the house, and even tried cooking dishes I used to make when Sarah was young, like her favorite roasted chicken with potatoes. Sarah thanked me with a radiant smile, and I felt like I was reliving my days as a mother. I thought, this is the purpose I have been searching for. I am still useful, still loved. But just a few months later, I began to realize that my dream did not quite match reality. Sarah's life was vastly different from what I had known. As a lawyer, she often worked late into the night, and Michael was equally busy with tech projects. Their beautiful home was always filled with hustle. Phones ringing constantly, emails needing responses, and the grandchildren's schedules packed with extracurricular classes and activities. I hoped for cozy evenings where I could share stories with Sarah about my teaching days, our camping trips with Robert, or simply my feelings. But those evenings were so rare they felt almost non-existent. Sarah often came home late, her face weary, and after a brief, "Thanks for helping, Mom," she would rush to her office or check the kids' homework. I tried to start conversations, but I often got only curt responses or distracted glances at her phone screen. Gradually, I felt like I was becoming an invisible part of the household. The generational gap became even more apparent when I tried to contribute to raising Sophie and Ethan. I wanted to teach them values I believed were important, saying please and thank you sitting up straight at the table, or spending time talking with family instead of being glued to an iPad. But Sarah and Michael had a different approach. They wanted the children to express themselves freely, unbound by rules they deemed outdated. Once when I asked Sophie to put her phone down to join us for dinner, Sarah gently said, "Mom, kids are different now. They need their own space." I felt hurt, as if the values I cherished were being dismissed, and worse, as if I were seen as old-fashioned. What broke my heart most was not the disagreements about raising the grandchildren, but the sense of losing my freedom, something I had once taken for granted. Before moving to Seattle, I had lived independently for 5 years after Robert's passing. I could decide everything: when to wake up, what to do, whom to meet. In the mornings, I would sit by the window with a cup of tea reading a Jane Austen novel, listening to the birds chirping in the garden. In the afternoons, I walked in the park near my house, joined a yoga class for seniors, or met friends at my favorite cafe to chat about life. Those were simple but precious moments because I was living true to myself. But living with Sarah changed everything. I had to adjust to the family's schedule. Every day I woke up early to make breakfast, take the grandchildren to school, clean the house, and cook dinner. What began as joyful tasks gradually became obligations. I no longer had time to read, walk, or meet friends. I hesitated to invite friends to Sarah's house for fear of inconveniencing the family, and driving 2 hours back to Portland to see them felt overwhelming. My life shrank revolving around the needs of Sarah's family, and I started to feel like I was losing myself. One time while wiping down the kitchen floor, I paused and looked out at the backyard. A small bird perched on a branch singing cheerfully, and I was reminded of the peaceful mornings in Portland when I could sit for hours gazing at nature. Now I had no time for such moments. I felt as though I had become a maid in my daughter's home, and that realization weighed heavily on my heart. The most painful part was the feeling of becoming extraneous in Sarah's life. I cleaned, cooked, and cared for the grandchildren, but my efforts seemed to blend into the daily routine, not fostering a bond between mother and daughter. Sarah no longer saw me as the mother who raised her, but as someone who helped with household chores. Once I prepared a special dinner with apple pie, a dish Sarah used to love, but she only ate a few hurried bites before apologizing and rushing off to an online meeting. I sat alone at the dining table, staring at the cooling pie, feeling like a ghost unnoticed by anyone. I had hoped my presence would bring joy and closeness to the family. I thought helping Sarah would make her value me more, that we would rebuild the deep mother-daughter bond we once had. But in reality, I felt forgotten. Sarah did not mean to hurt me. I know she loves me and is doing her best in her hectic life. But the pace of modern life, with its demands of work, financial pressures, and parenting responsibilities, had built an invisible wall between us. Some nights, when the house was quiet, I sat in my room looking out the window and wondering, where do I stand in this relationship? Am I still respected as a mother, as an older person? I love Sarah and the grandchildren, but I also yearn to live with dignity, to have the freedom to shape my own life. It was heartbreaking to realize that in my effort to bring joy to my children, I had unwittingly lost myself. Through this journey, I learned that living near your children is not always the solution to loneliness or the desire to be loved. In modern society, where independence is valued, many older people choose to live separately, maintaining relationships with their children through phone calls, visits, or family vacations. This does not mean family ties weaken. Rather, it creates space for each generation to live according to their desires. I began to understand that instead of living together, I could stay connected with Sarah through video calls, short visits, or weekends spent together. With separate spaces, we can cherish each other more, free from the daily stresses that strain relationships. I realized that what I needed was not just physical closeness, but emotional connection, those meaningful moments when we truly listen and understand each other. If I could do it all over again, I would choose a different path. I would learn to love my children, but also to love myself. I would find a way to live independently, embracing my later years in the way I desire. Perhaps I would join a painting class at the community center, learn to play the piano, or simply sit by the window with a cup of tea and a favorite book. I have come to realize that at this age, we do not just need love from our children, we also need the freedom and dignity to live fully. Now I have returned to Portland, living in a small apartment near my favorite park. I have joined a book club, reconnected with friends, and even started keeping a journal to capture my thoughts. I still stay in touch with Sarah and the grandchildren, but in a way that feels comfortable for both sides. Every month I drive to Seattle to visit the family, and those moments are more precious than ever because they are not diluted by the tensions of living together. Thank you for listening to my story. If you are considering living near your children in old age, I hope my story offers a fresh perspective. Think about what truly matters to you, not just family love, but also freedom, dignity, and personal happiness. Life in old age is a challenging journey, but it is also an opportunity to live true to who you are. What do you think of my story? Have you ever faced similar decisions? Please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to follow for more meaningful stories. Goodbye, and see you again.